Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast, where we discuss all things fantasy. I'm Stevie Collier, author of The Four Territories, and I'm here with my co-host Andy Peliquin, author of the Last Few Solari series. And we are here with the awesome Colby Rice, author of The Given, Hollow Point, The Taken, and Ghosts of Koa or K-O-A?
Yeah. Koa.
Koa. And we have an awesome show for you because Colby is a super smart lady. She could be a superhero because she has all these degrees and she speaks over 7 languages. We're going to get into all of that because I'm jealous and I hope it shows through my voice. If you're listening to this, I'm a little pissed. I am. So, is there any news for the week?
Well, I was just going to remark on how you're pitching your voice lower and lower in each new intro, you know.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and you're like, trying to sound much more like an adult now. I was going to congratulate you on it.
You're so, you know what? Everyone listening and viewing is going to think you're such a mean person. No one's going to go buy your books. You know what? You're not the first person this week to say, like, my voice dropped.
No, the thing is, your voice is the same, but then you did.
Oh,
and welcome to like really.
That's my show voice.
Yes, exactly.
That's my show voice. Next week, hello and welcome to the Fantasy podcast. I have some news. I'm not trying to self-promote myself or anything, but my short story prequel is out for the Four Territories, and I also got the first quarter of the Four Territories back from the editor. Super excited, just stressing out over covers. The book cover, that is, which I think all three of us can understand. It's, as self-publishers, we get choice over our covers. And in my opinion, the easiest thing to do is to write. The hardest part is everything else. Andy, you pick your covers, right?
To a certain extent, and then the publisher also has a lot of control over them. I will be self-publishing a few stories in the near future, and I will be controlling the cover design, which is a little bit more terrifying because I'm, if the cover is bad, then I can blame my publisher. But now that I'm doing the covers, it's like, well, if the covers are crappy, they were my crappy ideas, and I can't blame them on anybody.
Yeah, right. That's how I feel right now. Colby, your book covers are, in my opinion, like dark and grungy. Are they? Is that what they are? Is it a darker fantasy?
I definitely would not be ever accused of walking on the light and fluffy side.
Okay.
Let's put it that very graphic, very sort of high octane, action packed, very dark. So you got it right, exactly right.
Awesome. So you did really well with your book covers then.
Thank you. Yeah, I have my illustrator and graphic designer to thank. He's really amazing, and he knows exactly what I want, so he's good.
Yeah, I wish we could all be so lucky. I'm talking about myself because I can't find anybody that I trust and, will actually take the time out to talk to me about it and see what I want. And, so maybe I'll have to give your cover designer, just have to check him out. Is there anything fantasy we want to talk about? Are there any movies? Like, I haven't seen any good movies or TV shows out. Like, Game of Thrones is out, and that's why I've kind of been like a hermit, because I don't want to hear anything about it.
But dude, like, how are you seriously? When you said that in the email, I was like, are you seriously not put up on Game of Thrones? Like, I'm judging you.
I have no. Yeah, I can't. Like, people get mad if you're not watching Game of Thrones. it's like a law or something. Andy, are you kind of?
If you're a fantasy author, you kind of have to. It's like being a sci-fi author and not having watched Star Trek at some point in your life.
Or Firefly.
Firefly is space opera, so you can, it's a little bit more poppy. Like it's more pop culture. Whereas Star Trek literally defined the genre.
Okay. What is okay? So what is space opera? I see space and then I see people singing in their spaceships. What? I'm too busy writing to go look all this stuff up. What is it?
So space opera is much less epic in scale than your typical science fiction. A lot of science fiction tends to be, there's the military science fiction, which is, you know, war, whether fighting among humans or aliens, or then there's sort of the planet or universe spanning, reality bending stories that have a much epic scale. But then there's the ones that are, you know, set on a single ship, like Firefly. The ship goes everywhere, but it's really about the people. It's a soap opera essentially, but it's set in space.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. It's like a soap opera, space opera. Okay, I was thinking like singing. So there's so many book categories out there now. Sometimes I just get a good laugh of what I can find on Amazon. They have such weird. I wish I could think of one now. Like one is Arthurism, which is fantasy books based on King Arthur, which it doesn't even matter because the books in that category are nothing about King Arthur, or at least very few of them are. So,
or they'll have like a single reference, or, you know, the sword Excalibur appears in modern times, and that's
it. Yeah. All right, so Colby, why don't you give Andy and I and all of our listeners and viewers a little something about you, you know, you as an author, how you got started, what you like to do, and tell us about all your degrees and languages.
So yeah, as the guys just introduced me, I'm Colby Rice, and I am primarily a dystopian and urban fantasy, and what I like to personally call epic urban fantasy writer. We can talk about that later because that genre technically doesn't really exist as far as I know.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like to do like things that are a little bit different. So yeah, and I started really getting serious about writing. I mean, I've been writing my entire life, but I got really serious about it in 2012. And I was just like, I need to sit down and finally get this novel and this world that I've been building for the past 3 years, like down on paper. So thus the Books of Ezekiel series was born. And contrary to what the title actually sounds, like it's not at all about, it's not a biblical or religious series at all. Mm-hmm. It's sort of an interesting mashup of dystopian fiction with, again, like that epic urban fantasy scale, set in like a post-apocalyptic Earth, but there's like magic and alchemy and lords and high lords and domains and vassals and all kinds of stuff like that. So I can't even, I mean, I have no idea where all these things came from, but I'm really jazzed about it. And that's what I've been working on for the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. A little slow going, but I'm hoping it's going to like pick up very soon.
It seems like you've been doing pretty well. I mean, your first book has a lot of reviews, and it's hard to get reviews.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah,
so,
really is.
I mean, I think I have yet to publish my first book because I have made all the mistakes a brand new self-publishing author can make. So, and I'm also in what I like to call, well, actually what I've heard called is perfection paralysis. Oh. So yeah, it's just like, I gotta have everything perfect. Ooh, somebody told me they don't like this scene. I gotta go revamp it. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, Andy, but I gotta ask, what languages do you speak?
Okay, this is an interesting story. So aside from English, I speak Spanish, Italian. Italian is one of my like rustier languages. Arabic, Mandarin Chinese. Oh my gosh, I'm losing count. French, that's 5. Japanese, that's also one of my rustier languages. And this year I'm studying Russian. So all those in addition to English, I guess make 8. But like, don't get it twisted. You can't drop me in the UN and, you know, suddenly I'm like bringing the world together. It's not like that. But you can drop me in most places in the world and I can survive pretty well.
Well, as long as you can ask where the bathroom is in that many languages, you're good.
Wow. So how did you learn all these languages?
Honestly, so for high school, I went to a prep school, like really buttoned up, foo-foo shishi, like just bougie prep school. And but one of the benefits of that was that they offered a wide variety of languages. And so the first foreign language I ever really studied in depth was Chinese. In middle school, I was able to study Italian for a little bit. And then from there, I thought I really wanted to go into the United Nations as a translator. I really wanted to do that, and I really wanted to travel. Then I realized that was like not for me, but I still loved learning languages. So I studied Chinese. I studied Italian in middle school, Chinese and French in high school. Then when I went to college, I picked up Spanish in addition to those two languages. And also I did a year and a half of Japanese. I transferred to another college to finish out my undergrad degree. That's where I studied Arabic. And well, let me see, where does that bring me? And then, so now that I'm like doing my second master's, I'm studying Russian. So as long as I've been in school, I've always been, picture here. As long as I've been in school, I've always been like studying some kind of language, whether a new one or reviewing it. So it's just like, I've been a student for a long time. So I just take it as one of my classes. And so that's
I think Andy and I both really like languages, or at least, right, Andy, you like languages, right? He was born in Russia, and
really?
No.
I was like,
born in Japan.
He was born in Japan. That's true. He's not messing with you.
That's awesome. Do you speak Japanese?
Skoshidake. A little bit. I spoke like 50% of the language, which was enough to get around, but that was 15 years ago.
Well, that's great. So, I mean, you still have some of it, you know. That's awesome.
I can still ask where the toilet is, so we're good.
I think I could, what'd you say? Toire wa doko desu ka?
Exactly.
Well, see, I'm studying Japanese now, and I have my books somewhere, but I do 15 minutes a day. But do you have any tips for any Japanese listeners out there, or Japanese learners? You know what I mean?
Listen to as many like audio or as many audio clips and people, and watch as many cartoons and sort of like the children's stuff, or is in my opinion is really helpful for beginners, because they teach you all of like the basic stuff. They're not using any long complex sentences, and then you just like graduate from there. And watch a lot of anime.
Oh, that's not hard for me to do.
I love anime.
Yeah, me too. I am a weeaboo. A bearded weeaboo, yeah. Okay, so that was just me being selfish, asking some questions. Andy, do you think we should go to word of the day?
I'd love to hear your word of the day, Stevie.
You know, I would too, because I keep forgetting how to pronounce it, but I believe it is rapacious.
It's definitely not urinate. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I just not to go all rapey, but I feel like I'm saying rape instead of rapacious. Yeah. You know, like. Is it rapacious? I hope it is, because rapacious. Okay. Because now, like, I want to be at a restaurant, like, oh, I'm gonna eat this food so rapishly. You know? It's not gonna work.
Well, actually, rapacious is related to the word rape.
Is it? Okay.
They're related. That's why. Well, I'll let you do the word of the day, but I guess
no. Please, if you actually, I didn't even know about this word until because I actually. Andy and I are both like signed up for Word of the Day on dictionary.com.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. All right. We're all dorks around here. All right.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I like to look up, stuff and darker words. But actually, if you know the word, please be our guest.
I heard you defining it earlier, but it's like. It's related to like ravishing. It comes from like rapere, like the Latin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. For any of you guys who actually speak Latin, just like, I'm sorry in advance. But it comes from the verb rapere, which means to like take, to snatch. And that's like where like the word rape comes from. That's part of the place where the word ravish comes from, which also means to rape. But essentially it means to like, if you're rapacious, you're like you grab stuff that's not yours, like you're aggressive, you're an invader, right? I mean, you have the actual official definition in front of you, I think, but.
Yes, it's it means graspy, greeting of plunder, but it also says given to taking by force or aggressively greeting.
There you go.
Exactly.
Colby, you're a walking dictionary. A walking international dictionary.
I try.
That's awesome. I knew it, Andy. I knew we were going to be with the genius today, and I'm not being sarcastic.
I feel so flattered. Thank you.
You know, you're a polyglot. You're a novelist, which is a huge deal. Like, I'm always scared at the point where I'm just going to be like on my 4th book, and then I'm not going to see it as an achievement anymore. And I don't want it to be like, you know, because one might not sell, but it's still, you wrote a damn novel. You know, it's a big deal. And
it's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so could you, I know I'm curious, you want to tell us a little bit about your books and, you know, the plot, the blurb?
Yeah, sure. So basically, there has been, and we don't see this in the actual series, at least not yet, there was a massive cataclysm in the world. I know what happens, but you guys are going to have to wait to find out. Called the Collapse. And basically what it has done is set up a whole new sort of post-apocalyptic environment wherein 2 civilizations have basically able to survive and rise up. Those are the civilians, and then the others are the Azures. And the Azures have full control over really the one thing that has allowed them to live and you know, be successful and to survive these post-apocalyptic conditions, and that is the art of alchemy. So basically, the Azures are trying to essentially colonize the civilians because the civilians are a lot, you know, they're smaller, they have fewer territories, and they just, the Azures just want alchemy to permeate the entire world, and they want to rule over them. And essentially, there's 4 different points of views going on right now, or 5 maybe. It's sort of hard to kind of keep count. It's a multiple POV series all throughout the entire series, but the main character, her name is Ezekiel, and basically she is a civilian who is living in one of the last remaining free territories with her family and her little sister, and she is witnessing basically this impending war that is coming to swallow her people whole. And so the entire book, at least the first few books, are about her and her journey to survive this impending war. And she gets caught up right in the middle of it. That's essentially the push of the series right now.
It sounds pretty awesome.
Thanks.
That is awesome.
Thanks. I could say some other stuff, but like I don't want to like ruin it. So girl tries to survive war. Girl has deep dark secrets. Ooh. Action, adventure, faces falling off. Like all these kinds of things. So yeah. And the actual series itself right now, I'm crossing my fingers, but I'm planning 40 books in the series, and Andy's face.
40 books.
Wow.
When I told you it was epic urban fantasy, I was not playing with you guys, okay? And so basically each of the books, and they're not exactly like the same number of books, but each sort of set of books within the 40 books, they're divided into like seasons. So it's kind of like looking at seasons of television. So there's 10 seasons in total, each one like sort of dealing with an arc of the storyline. So it's a big world. Like we get to see like the whole world. So I'm excited. Yeah, it's a big project.
Ooh, and man, talk about ambitious.
Yeah, you say big project.
It's taken a long time. So part of me wishes that I hadn't started this project, and the other part of me is like, well, it's fun. So
it's like you're rewriting the Epic of Gilgamesh.
or the Bible.
or the Bible. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you flatter me. You flatterers.
It's like
that's basically that.
That's really cool. It's like something you could write a whole brand new language for too, and you could stick that in there.
I have actually. I've created a language called Meshnai.
Meshnai. That's awesome. Meshnai.
Yeah. Fun. You actually would be surprised, like, not that it's easy to create a language, but like when you've studied at least one language, it's so much easier because you can basically like steal some grammatical rules or make up your own, but like sort of how to get in and out of a language. So yeah, it's great. I really enjoy it. Yeah, exactly. So that's me.
Cool, man. And here I was feeling good about myself because I tell some interesting stories, and then she comes in and just like boom.
Yeah.
Well, I love your stories, Andy. I peeked inside of the last Busalari. Yeah, hyping it up right now. So
yeah, actually, I'm glad you bring that up. I wanted to show all of our viewers my copy of Blade of the Destroyer. Yes, get it on Amazon. The only bad thing is Andy didn't sign this one, so I'm a little upset with him. Even though it came from Amazon's printers, but he should still have figured out a way to sign it.
I know. They really ought to make a way to do that for booksellers, because they could make so much money.
Yeah.
So much more money doing it like that.
I actually listened to a podcast about that where Amazon wants to create like some kind of way that when somebody buys a signed edition that the author can sign on their computer and then print it on there. That'd be cool. I would do that. Would be so awesome.
It would actually be incredibly simple, because you have these digital signature things, and all they have to do is say someone's made this purchase, sign it, and they've got a little thing, and you just sign it with your mouse or even a finger or something. And then, because they don't print it in the instant that someone buys it, it goes through the whole process. So then they could still get it done. And
I forgot where I listened to that podcast. I listened to so many self-publishing podcasts I don't even remember. But anyway, so today's topic is Afro-Futurism.
Woo-hoo.
And Colby, I noticed you don't have your afro. It's in the picture and it looks awesome. Oh, okay.
Cue up super goofy joke. She's gonna pull it out in the future.
Yeah.
Boom.
Oh yeah.
A good one. That was actually good.
So I'm ignorant to Afrofuturism, so if you want to kind of explain that.
Absolutely. Okay, so basically Afrofuturism is literally what it sounds like, dealing with Blackness, Black identity, social issues, economic issues, political issues, but in a more like futuristic context, in a magical realist context, in a sci-fi, fantasy, horror, urban fantasy context. Now, this doesn't mean that, Black sci-fi and fantasy writers are sitting down and preaching to you like what the mores of society should be. But in a lot of our works, we are taking social questions and sort of thought experiments and just injecting a little bit of Black culture in there. And for a lot of us, Black culture means many different things. Obviously it's not just hip hop culture, although that's something that, a lot of us are into, but then you'll see from, for example, the Nigerian community or the Ghanaian community or the African community on the continent, them combining a very strong, Nigerian culture with like cyborgs or with, a fantasy context. So you guys have heard of I don't know if you have heard of it, but it's called Soul and Sword, right?
I was just talking about that. Well, when I was doing my live reading, talking about the podcast, and now let me see if I've got this right. It's sort of like sword and sorcery, but the soul is more like the Haitian and Jamaican and Louisiana and African styles of magic or religious practice, correct?
Exactly. So instead of dealing with sort of like an old English context or European context, it's a lot of the same tropes, but just dealing with like an African context. Yeah, Andy, you're on point. You got it exactly right. Yeah.
This is a really fascinating topic, so I did just a little bit of research before.
Yeah. Okay. Excuse me. Okay.
I listened to a podcast by Michelle Spiva. You may have you heard of her?
I have, yeah.
She is awesome, and I learned so much. And I actually I came here with a list of questions, so I did. I have, and I'll just one question: why I didn't understand Afrofuturism at first was because of the word futurism, and I was like, well, how does that have to do with fantasy? Because in fantasy, in my mind, it's like in the past,
right? Right.
So it's still Afrofuturism is still about fantasy, right?
Yeah, it's all encompassing. It's basically people say SFF, it's our way of saying SFF, but like with Black people.
Okay.
Basically.
One company that is doing it surprisingly well is Marvel Comics. I don't know if you've read the Black Panther comics written by Ta-Nehisi Coates.
No, I have not. I have not read that particular one. I want to.
It's basically the every Black Panther comic published in the last 9 months to a year. They've gotten authors in to come and write it, and so they're taking it away from, you know, Black Panther kicking butt and actually getting into the culture of Wakanda and the religious beliefs and the practices and stuff like that, and really delving into it.
That's awesome.
In the context of an African nation,
yeah,
you know, with an ancient history dating back thousands of years, what sort of world it would be like, instead of just saying, well, you know, it's just a bunch of black people.
Right.
So I thought
yeah.
it was really well done.
That's great. I definitely want to check it out, especially since the Black Panther movie is coming out in 2018. Yeah. It looks sick as hell, and I'm super excited.
He actually, I think it was Civil War that he was introduced.
Yes.
And honestly, I didn't like the movie, and everybody hates me for not liking the movie, but
I don't like it either. It's okay.
I know, right? Andy, I think we've talked about this before. You've never liked me since. Well, I don't like I can't give away the ending, but I don't like the ending. Anyway, for me, Black Panther stole the show. I thought he was the coolest superhero, and I was like, why don't they just make a movie about him? And I never expected them to. I was like, they'll make a movie about Ant-Man, but not about the Black Panther, which Ant-Man was hilarious, but and then when I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, this has exceeded my expectations. I really want to see it. And not only that, the dude's ripped. He is awesome. Like, Andy and I both like fitness, and this guy, he's definitely, he trained hard for the role, so I'm excited to see it.
You know, he definitely brought a lot of emotional anchoring to Civil War that I feel like was necessary. You know,
with his father.
Yeah, that whole storyline. I mean, I was just like, I was the most invested in his storyline because of that, you know. But anyway, I don't want to ruin anything. But I also did not enjoy Civil War, so you're not alone.
And he's gonna reach out of the computer and get us.
I know, smack you guys.
Andy, have you actually read the Black Panther comics?
Yeah, I have.
How are you getting your hands on them? I'd like to do it as well.
They have them. You can find them online.
Oh, you were stealing.
No, you can find them. People who upload them to, I don't know. It's not DeviantArt, but there's a bunch of like art sites where they upload comics and stuff.
I'll have to go check.
It's been a while since I've read them. Yeah, but now Colby, let me ask you this: How do African Americans, people, or even Africans, feel about white people sort of writing black characters? Let's say.
I was going to ask the same thing.
So now, honestly, that's a challenge, and so I don't want to speak for all of us, but I think that honestly the community split 50-50, and this is why I say that. I think that most of us are happy that the stories are being told, period. So I think a lot of us don't want to like complain because we're just like, well, at least we're, you know, getting these stories out there. But then, you know, there are also a lot of us who are just like, well, you know, I mean, can they really write our experience? Can they really write, you know, sort of an African experience that like is not only based on real culture, but also projects onto like a fantastical culture? You know, there is a lot of trepidation around that. So, but I think that for the most part, if it's well done and it's respectful, and it doesn't slide into stereotypical sort of tropes and roles and making us look like thugs and gangsters, I think for the most part, like we're cool with it. But there's also the other politics about Marvel's hiring practices as a whole. Most of the people in my community that I deal with who write are they're actual indie comic writers. So I know most of the Black comic writers in the industry, and you know, it's very hard for them to break in. And so, you know, there's a little bit of contention around that. Like, well, yeah, we're glad that the stories are being written, but they could let more African Americans or Africans write these stories. At the same time that we have Coach writing Black Panther too. So, you know, some of us are getting through. So I think a lot of us were really happy about that. Yeah. And Roxanne Gay, who I believe is writing the female Iron Man.
She's awesome.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I really like what they did with her.
Yeah. I'm excited about that. So yeah, you know, it's mixed. I would have to say it's probably mixed.
Well, is it still? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say something that I didn't really consider. In my Queen of Thieves series, I introduce a character. She's from a country called Gandia, which is sort of like a mix, sort of like a Central African country. So I drew on cultures like the Maasai warriors, and it's fantasy, so it's very.
That's cool.
And so when I was writing it, I was trying to make it as authentic to this character as possible, but then without thinking about the bigger picture, how she was not how she was being depicted, because she was written for a very specific role. And then it just so happened that I had this idea, and it sort of stuck with me, and it became this evolution of this character. But then, thinking about it now, the character, she was basically trafficked into the city. And so considering the history, it's like, oh, did I inadvertently play to those stereotypes? Right, but then it's a fantasy world, and it's trying to be as realistic as possible, and given a medieval setting, it would be very common. So it's a really fine line to walk.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I mean, I think that intentionality is everything. Sometimes for people, intentionality doesn't matter. Well, they just look at the end result. Was the end result respectful? Or if it wasn't, then it doesn't matter what he meant to do. But in my opinion, intentionality is very key. If you're invested and you want to write diverse characters, then I think that we should all, feel like we can, as long as we're being respectful, doing the research and asking questions, like feel the liberty to do so. Because I mean, I write Asian characters, I write Hispanic characters, and we live in a multicultural world. So ultimately those things are going to come in. And I just think that it's important, like, not to scare people off from that, but just to make writers aware of how to avoid tropes and stuff like that. But it doesn't mean that, we should just keep our hands completely off of it, because otherwise these characters just wouldn't get written, So
yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Yes. Is it still Afrofuturism if you write a character whose skin is black and you say, oh, he's a black man or she's a black woman, but there is no culture, no black culture behind her because she is in a brand new world that the author built? Is it still Afrofuturism? Because I would like to add more races into my worlds, but I can't say he's Asian. I can't say that. I would have to say, I don't even know how I would explain that, but is it still Afrofuturism if there's no more culture behind it? It's just the color of their skin.
That is such a good question, and I can't answer it because we're literally arguing about that in the community right now. Like,
really?
Yes, there are, and because when I was doing my other degree and I was studying the community of like Black sci-fi and fantasy writers, I definitely noticed a major schism between the what I like to call blackity black. Like, if the character's black,
blackity black,
like you're black on the outside, black on the inside, black in what you do, and black in how you roll. It's like,
yeah.
And then so for some people, blackness means a very particular thing. And Afrofuturism means that not only is he black, but he is also doing, black things, whatever those things are. And he's also engaging in some sort of original culture, like an African culture. For others, like for myself, for example, I'm Black American. So I don't know much. I mean, I know lots of Afro-Caribbeans. I know a lot of Africans, but I was not raised in that culture. So I can really only talk about the suburban and urban culture. And so, for example, like my character Ezekiel, she is African-American, and there aren't really, she acts, I guess, she has like sort of blackness and soul to her at times, but it can be argued that she is, quote, not black enough for, an Afrofuturistic environment. And, I have definitely pushed back against that because I think we all Black people, we're very diverse and we bring different experiences into these worlds. And I feel like anything that deals with Black people is Afrofuturist. That's my perspective. But for other people, if you're not, doing soul and sword or sword and soul, if you're not doing steampunk, then you're not Afrofuturist. And so it's actually like a big fight in the community right now.
Steampunk?
Steampunk instead of
that is
steampunk.
Awesome. Steampunk.
Yeah, steampunk, diesel funk, stuff like that.
See, these are these categories I've never heard of. I like that.
Yeah, nobody knows about them except for us, but maybe one day they'll be mainstream.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Colby. You personally, as an author, how do you feel? Like, let's say if I'm writing a science fiction novel, and I just mention once or twice that the guy has black skin, and that's it. Like this society is so advanced that the color of your skin doesn't matter. Do you feel that is like progressive, showing where the world could be, or it's it's reductionist, like taking away from the struggles, both historic and current, of Black people, and just saying, well, in the future it's going to be better. Like, sort of like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Personally, I don't think it's reductionist, because for me, I tend to have a very flexible definition of what it means to be Black. So, this is not to say that we're ignoring the history, but like, I feel, especially if you're writing fantasy, world and context are really important. So if you're dealing with like a high fantasy where you're creating a completely separate, different world, if skin color doesn't really matter, then that's just the rule of your world, and I can't, I'm more one to argue with an author if something is problematic, like obviously problematic, as opposed to, well, this is just the premise of the world that we're in. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Yeah.
I don't think it's reductionist. I mean, I don't think it's very hard to believe that in the future there are going to be some people who are dark skinned and some people who are not, and then you just note that and you move on.
Yeah.
Maybe there are bigger concerns, like maybe class is a bigger concern, or gender or sexuality, or what have you, depending on the context of your story. But I don't think it's reductionist, as long as you don't have him shucking and jiving and doing it like like stereotypical. Like, don't let him tap dance for massa. Like, that's not cool, Like, don't do that. And you're good. Listen, I'm just telling you.
yeah, for sure. No, because I was thinking about that. Like if you would have talked about sexuality in 2000, you would have had people just totally freaking out over the incredibly high number of sexualities and genders and preferences there are today. Now, someone says, "Oh, I'm gay." It's like, okay, I'm Andy. Like it's such a small thing. So by that same token, the human race still has a long way to go before everything is truly inclusive. But then, I feel like, well, if there was a way to, like, if there were, say, writing science fiction in this future, they look at people and they say, well, he's Black, he's purple, he's green, and he's white. Doesn't really matter the color of their skin. Now I hate you because you wear your pants backwards. Like finding out the reasons to have conflict.
Right.
But as long as that doesn't detract from sort of the cultural struggle or the historical struggle of the people, then I feel I'm wondering if that's something that people are okay with.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think for most of my readers, at the least, I don't want to speak it for myself, they just take the world for what it is, and I don't know. So that's my perspective. I can't speak for everybody.
Well, that's one more perspective than we had 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. How, so you said you've written an Asian character before, right?
Yes, he's one of the main characters in the books of Ezekiel.
How did you describe him without using Asian, or is it?
I mean, so there are two places where I describe Caleb, and actually 3 places. One is in his name. Like, his name is sort of obviously like Japanese, although he's using like an English version of it.
Okay.
But then, like, there's another Asian character that, because race is sort of like a point of contention to a certain degree in my series. So he meets another Asian character, and they have like a moment. Not, I wouldn't call it like an Asian moment, quote unquote, but they have like a point of recognition, like mutual recognition. And then when I described him physically, I just described his eyes as almond shaped, and I haven't gotten any complaints thus far. Again, like, because I'm still treading very lightly myself. Just because I'm Black, that does not give me the card to just trample on other people, So, yeah, and he also speaks Japanese in the novel. So, like, at different points, little sprinkles of information, you kind of get that he's Asian.
Okay, that helped a lot.
Yeah.
That did. That helped a lot.
Good.
That's one thing that I sort of tried to do with my Gandhian character, was instead of because she has dark skin in a white-skinned country, she stands out, right? But then I try to include sort of snippets of her culture, like she's caring for this child, and she teaches him sort of the dance that her mother taught her. Which all of a lot of the African tribes, they had the war dances, but then also the ceremonial dances, and or she brings chocolate, which doesn't exist in this world, and she says, "Oh, it's a recipe from my mother." You know, just like trying to bring the culture to show sort of the differences instead of describing them physically, instead of relying on the physical descriptions or even the names, just showing those, you know, those cultural differences and how, you know, despite all of the similarities, the origin of these people led to to such differences. And I find that a great way to bring in these different ethnicities and stuff. Like I wrote a Muslim, half Pakistani character, and I don't know a lot about the Pakistani culture or Islam, but given that the you know, America is such a melting pot, it was easy to bring in the influences through her culture and through the things that her, you know, her parents taught her, the way she reacts to situations. Yeah. Well, you know, being authentic to the race and the religion while still being a character that I can be familiar with.
Right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that's really cool. Yeah, just like I feel like just painting like a really light brush in those like little spots, I think is really, really helpful, because like for the most part, people care about characters because they're human, right? But then all humans have like certain things that they, you know, mannerisms, cultural things, religious things, language things that like make up who they are and where they come from. So I just think like looking at trying to sprinkle those things in is really helpful. Kind of like how he did in like Inglourious Bastards. Have you guys seen that movie? Not to get too off the topic. Right. Okay. So, and I'm not going to ruin it, but you know, there's a point at which, you know, one of the guards realizes that there's like a little plot going on. I don't know if you remember the bar scene, the tavern scene.
Yes.
Right. And then I'm wondering, like, okay, how did that happen? And then the woman explains, like, there was a cultural difference. I don't know if you remember that particular, but there was a cultural difference in how, like, American or Englishmen present themselves versus Germans. I don't know if you remember that part. And so that little mini thing, it changed the entire, like, subtext for me, like, of that scene and what had happened. And I just felt like it was a really brilliant thing that Quentin Tarantino sort of injected in there, you know? So just things like that. Anyway, so not to ruin the movie for everybody out there, but if you haven't seen it, like, what are you doing? Go see Inglourious Basterds.
Right.
It's old enough that it's not really ruining it.
Right.
And pull yourself out of that rock.
So.
All right. Well, we are 45 minutes in. This has been awesome. This is one of my favorite discussions that we've had so far. But we're going to run out of time before we get to the reading part, so we got to get to the reading part.
I'll be right back. Just quick bathroom break. Too much coffee. I know. I'll be right back.
All right. So, Colby, how many characters are there to read in this story, in the scene that you sent us? I think we all froze. This is when there's that awkward silence that normally Stevie would have filled, but I'm terrible at filling it. Oh, Colby, you're back.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Sorry, my phone died, and I was like praying my laptop would work, and it worked. Okay, I am back in the mix.
Perfect. That's good. And Stevie left at the same time, so I was just like hanging out there on this empty,
like, hey, YouTube.
Yeah. So I was asking you, how many characters are there in this scene that we're going to read? Is it just 1 or 2 characters, or how many?
Oh my gosh, there's 1, 2, 3. There's like 5 characters up in this piece. Like we're gonna have to double cast or something.
Yes. All right. Now, what do you want to read? Do you want to read characters, or do you want to read the narrator?
I want to be the narrator. I want to hear your guys' interpretation.
Oh, no.
Like I want to hear bad Croat and Eastern European accents. I want to hear Bostonian accents.
I can't do Bostonian, but I think I can sort of do an Eastern European accent.
Okay.
And I can't do any of them, so
it's okay. You do what you can do.
So what character?
So who are, okay. Yeah, tell us what to read.
Okay, so let's see. Andy, you're gonna be Zakaya. He's the main guy talking. Stevie, you're gonna be the vassal.
The vassal.
Yes. You're also gonna be Bly. No. Andy, you're gonna be Bly, and then Stevie, you're gonna be Joseph.
So I'm Joseph and the vassal.
Yes, and Andy is Zakaya and Bly.
And now, which accents am I supposed to try to pretend to know with these guys.
Zakaya is the guy with the Eastern European assassin accent. Yes.
All right.
And
Bly?
Sorry.
Bly is the Bostonian. So you got all the accents. Stevie, you're chilling.
Yeah, I'm chilling. That's definitely the word I would use. So the vassal, is it like wispy or?
It's not fair to ask because I already had the audiobook made, so I already have it in my mind. How about you just do like dark and dangerous,
Okay. And Joseph, is that like a father figure?
No.
I see Joseph and Mary, so
he's definitely like the rookie, the greenhorn on the team.
okay, so young.
Yes, he's young.
Perfect.
And Bly is a little bit more of a veteran. He's kind of a dick, and Zakaya is the seasoned assassin who will blow your head off.
All right.
Sweet.
I'm not gonna try Bostonian because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna make it so bad. So we'll just do a normal voice ish.
It's okay. It's all right. And then there's a girl in here. I'm gonna do her voice in a very bad acting way. So just
yeah.
All right.
And so I start here.
No. Yes, you do. Yes, you are the vassal.
Okay.
Yes.
So whenever y'all are ready.
All right. Okay. 1, 2, and go.
That page is the heart of the order, proficient.
The simplicity of his vassal's statements threaded calm through the dark belly of the car, but the threat in his voice was unmistakable. Zakaya locked his jaw, nodding as much from obedience as from the tightness in his throat that had stolen his voice. If they didn't get the page back, he'd be punished. But far worse than that, his vassal would be disappointed. He wouldn't fail. He couldn't.
Take them out,
his vassal murmured.
I know you can.
Zakaya swallowed and nodded at him, fear and pride swelling in his chest. He rolled down the window and wind blasted into the truck. With a smooth slide, he navigated his body through, positioning himself on the ledge. White bursts of fire lit the night as Bly's shots knocked out one of the sedan's tires, slowing it down 30 seconds until they hit the freeway.
Steady, Joseph,
Zakaya said, lifting the rifle scope to his eye. He focused his thoughts on the driver's head, searching for it in the long stretch in front of him. He had homed in on the driver right before they sped off, and he could do it again. He just had to feel it. He stared down the scope, letting it drift across the swerving sedan, and something aligned, linking his slamming heart, the rifle, his eye, and the bobbing head of the driver far in front of them. He pulled the trigger, and the driver's head snapped forward, slamming into the steering wheel.
Oh,
yes. Metal squealed high, and rubber peeled from the rims of the sedan as it veered off its path. It crashed into the bordering thickets of the highway, the hood folding in on itself like an accordion, crushed. Bly roared with triumph, slamming his fist into Joseph's headrest.
Zakaya, man, you're an animal.
Zakaya frowned as he looked back at him.
I mean...
Bly stuttered.
Nice job, Captain. Badges.
Zakaya commanded.
Yeah, right.
Joseph maneuvered the truck a few feet away from the crash. They had barely rolled to a stop before Bly popped open his door, jumped out, and ran over to the wreck. Joseph hurried after him, his gun up. Zakaya followed, holding up his rifle, aiming at the overturned car. The fools. The hunted could have any number of traps prepared, and the young rookies were ambling over, hooting in celebration. He, on the other hand, kept his distance, and his eye remained ready for even the slightest movement. Joseph and Bly were good cops, for what flat feet were worth, but neither of them understood the true magnitude of this mission. Behind him, Vassal Moss seemed to glide out of the truck, never once making a noise in the night. The leaves didn't even crunch beneath his feet as he followed them to the crash. Bly and Joseph had already made their ways over to the steaming wreckage and were fumbling with something in the front seat. There was scuffling, and a scared whine wound its way out of the twisted metal as the two agents dragged something out of the front passenger seat. One of the hunted was still alive. Bly threw the rebel to the ground and spat on its shadow.
Down, scum,
he snarled. Zakaya tightened his grip on his rifle. Bly, like a jackal, was stealing his kill.
Calm, proficient. Is that right? Am I doing it right?
Yeah, you're doing it great.
Okay.
Vassal murmured from behind them. Zakaya nodded tightly at the warning. His vassal knew him well, too well, but he was right. Closing out this mission was more important than a few seconds of glory. Resigned, Zakiah slung his rifle on his shoulder as he approached the two agents.
Only one survivor, Captain,
Joseph announced.
The driver's head is dog meat, and the one in the back died in the crash.
Joseph tossed him something, and Zakiah caught it, already knowing what it was. A porcelain mask, just the bottom half of it, hard and smooth. A telltale trademark of the Knights of Almo, Koa, terrorist dogs who fancied themselves men. Zakiah cradled the mask in his hand, feeling the ridges of the molded nose, cheeks, and mouth, all of them together barely the size of his own palm. It was the captive's. He looked up at the squirming rebel, finally noticing the long red hair that spilled out onto the grass. A woman. He smiled, somehow feeling impressed amidst his annoyance. Her face was speckled with a constellation of freckles, acne even. She couldn't have been any older than 16. This is the vassal.
Sorry. Show her to me.
The soft command had come from the shadowed man at Zakiah's heels, the vassal. Joseph and Bly hoisted the rebel to her knees and lowered their heads in the vassal's direction. Zakiah cast down his eyes and stepped to the side, allowing his vassal to pass before he lifted his gaze again. The vassal stood before the captive, staring at her with soft eyes. Finally, he spoke.
How young. I might have known Koa would send pups to do a dog's work. What should I do with you, I wonder? What purpose will you serve?
No purpose, sir,
Bly said.
I say kill the Cohen scum.
No, we'll do no such thing. We are to honor the Articles 39.
The vassal replied. He turned to Zakiah.
The car.
Zakiah nodded and went to work. He tossed the sedan, cast the corpses aside, ripped up carpet, gutted the trunk, seats, and glove compartment, or what was left of it. Nothing. There weren't even any signs of it. No traces of energy, not even a ripple in the air where it might have passed through. Nothing betrayed its location. He frowned, turning to his superior.
Vessel, this faction must have been a decoy, so the real transport could get away.
Bitterness coated his tongue, almost forcing the words back.
They've hidden it somewhere else.
His vassal's cold gaze flickered, and Zakiah tensed, expecting words of admonishment or worse, disappointment. But to his surprise, the vassal said nothing. Instead, he turned to the rebel.
Lift her up,
he ordered. Joseph and Bly hoisted the woman to her feet so that her gaze was level with his. You azure bastards can go to hell.
Yay.
She said, the pubescent snarl clear. You can't kill me. Even your own code won't allow it.
Oh no, we are going to kill you at all.
Vassal agreed.
That's barbaric.
The man balled up his hand and schlack. The girl's face fell from her cheekbones and cartilage, slapping wetly against the grass. She howled, a long, wailing sound that whistled from the milky shine of her jaw. As she screamed, the large white balls in her eye sockets rolled like slippery, hard-boiled eggs, and her teeth, exposed to the gums, clacked together with frenetic snaps.
Hold on. Wow. Okay. Awesome. Zakiah, if you please.
The vassal said. Bly and Joseph's faces paled with terror, but without so much as a flicker of disgust. Zakiah scooped the dripping wrinkles of skin from the ground, gripping it in a fist.
Display, please.
Zakiah held the sagging flesh in front of the woman's eyes. The cheeks and lips of it drooped, as though lamenting the girl's disfigurement.
3 cc's of morphine, please, Joseph.
Trembling, Joseph pulled the kit from his side pack and began to prepare the anesthetic. Bly held her, still turning his eyes away as Joseph slid the needle into the base of her neck and emptied its contents. Then the vassal stepped forward, bringing his nose close to her face.
I can imagine that you are in incredible pain,
he said.
The morphine is to numb that for you so we can talk.
Ooh, ass hurts, she screamed, but without lips, the curses just sounded like angry gibberish. She began to sob.
Not to worry, my dear. You are going to get your face back. How much of it is ruined, however, is up to you. Now, I'm going to ask you some questions. For every answer I think is a lie, my proficient is going to slice away an inch of your face and burn it.
The vassal motioned to Zakaya, who still held the sagging flesh in the moonlight. Please, please don't. Her sobs crescendoed, forming echoes in the night, and her body heaved with each cry.
And we'll begin.
And with almost a lover's touch, he took her chin in his thumb and forefinger.
When you said dark, I didn't realize it was going to be like that. Very nice.
You got one more line. You missed like the punchline.
Yeah, Stevie.
It's not on my,
Oh, it's not on your thing?
yeah, I didn't get it.
It says, now,
Oh, okay.
you tell me, where is the final page?
Now, you tell me.
Dun, dun.
Where is the final page?
Oh,
Dun, dun, dun.
I pull it up on from my email and it works just fine, but I downloaded it and all that was missing.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad.
No, I'm sorry. I ruined the show.
No, you were great. You were a great evil vassal. You did great.
How did I compare to the audiobook guy?
The audiobook guy is better than all of us, and that's okay because I paid him to be. But you guys were still great.
That's awesome. So, how is the audiobook working for you? Have you seen a return on investment with it?
Yeah, actually, so there wasn't really much investment because we did like the royalty split. Now, mind you, we probably won't do that this time around. But so every single penny I make is pretty much like profit, but he gets like a slice of it. But the audiobook is doing pretty okay. I mean, it's not blowing up the charts or anything, but people tend to really enjoy it a lot. I know of all my narrator stuff that he's done, it's the best selling of the ones that he's narrated. But again, still at the bottom of the pile.
I cannot wait to get my book as an audiobook because that's my favorite form. Well, it's my only form because I don't have time to read. I read, so I'm in the car for like 2.5, 3 hours a day. So that's my reading. Damn.
Are you commuting to work? What's going on with that?
Yeah, that's commuting to work. So, and with traffic and then I'm at the gym and I'm listening to books too. Andy, I know you do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my favorite part of working out.
Such an author thing to say.
But yeah, thanks for doing it. You too, Andy. You did a great job. You have like that. You have the accent. I could hear it. It was like, oh, okay. It was good. It was cool.
I feel bad because it was almost the same as the Russian accent I did a few weeks ago. But my Eastern European is limited now. If you got German, you can. I will be happy to read that.
How does the German sound? Got to give me something.
It's a little softer. So you can say
okay.
The German accent sounds a little like this.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
That's good. You could go to Germany now.
Ja, mein Freunde. Sehr gut.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great.
I feel like German is the one language that I would actually take up learning right now. Like if there was a reason to learn a language, I would learn German.
Really? I would have thought it'd be Japanese. You were?
Yeah. What? My parents are in the Air Force. It's not because But yes, I that's the only language I haven't taken.
Wow.
That I've wanted to take. But so if you learn, Andy, you have to teach me.
sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, it's 5:30. So this is time for us to close out. Colby, why don't you tell our viewers/listeners where they can find your books and about you?
Okay, well, if you want to find anything about me, you can go to my website. It's colbyrrice.com. That's COLBYRRICE.com. It has everything on it. My books, my podcasts, my audiobooks, a whole bunch of stuff. And then the next book in the series is coming out very soon. It's called Hollow Point. That's book number 3 in the Books of Ezekiel series. And that'll be out sometime this fall. I wish I could give us a firmer deadline, but I'm still working on it.
And you also have a podcast, I see.
Yes, it is called The Epic Fantastical Journey of a Black Female Sci-Fi Writer. And I want to get guests on. It's not like as cool as your podcast. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm getting there. I'm working there. I'm working up to
it. To be a guest on your show, do you have to be Black?
No, you do not have to be Black, because as far as I would love to have you on.
As long as you don't mind talking to the two whitest people in existence.
See, like, because it's about like my journey, it's about everybody who I meet on my journey too. So you see what I'm saying?
I could kind of like, hi, I'm Stevie. I'm a fantasy writer. I drink a lot of milk. And I play Dungeons and Dragons on my off time.
You guys are hilarious.
What's really, really sad about that is I drank almost a quarter of a gallon of milk today, and I've been thinking about Dungeons and Dragons like almost all day. So it's sad, but that's really me, just without the horrible.
We know you got some strong bones. You're up on your calcium and your vitamin D game. So
that was my post-workout with my eggs and turkey bacon. So
I feel you. Wait, you guys are like, can you give me some fitness tips? Maybe not like now, because I know you guys got to go. But like, you know, in the future, just like post like fitness tips for writers, because you know we don't really stay in shape, most of us. You guys are like an exception to the rule.
Andy, that's a good idea, by the way. We should make a blog post.
Yeah.
Our first co-authored thing. So, well, Andy, I'll shut up now. I'll shut up. You can close us out. I do this every podcast.
You're the one who does the closing.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like, okay. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening or viewing the Fantasy Fiends podcast. We really appreciate your time. Now, what would really help us out is not only going to colbyrrice.com, but also hitting that like button and that subscribe button on our YouTube. YouTube is a really hard platform to be successful on, so that really helps us out. Again, we really appreciate you as a viewer and a listener. Tune in next week where we will have
Jessica Fry.
Like French fry.
Yeah, exactly like that. She's got a few novellas and short stories out. She's gearing up to publish her first fantasy novel in November. So we're gonna get a little bit more of behind the scenes about getting into the fantasy genre as a new time,
awesome.
as a first time for a new author.
Her and I will have a lot to discuss.
Yeah.
So
from up here in my lofty perch, I will have, lots of wisdoms to impart.
Wow. You remind me of the owl on Winnie the Pooh.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Oh gosh.
I love how we all got that reference.
And the best part about it is the owl thinks he's so wise, and he's actually not. I don't know if you've seen the episode of Winnie the Pooh where Christopher Robin goes to school, and they're all like, "Where is he?" And he leaves a note saying, "I'm off to school," and they take it to the owl, who's the only one who can read, and he translated it as skull. So they go off on this epic adventure to find Christopher Robin, rescue him from the skull.
That's the movie.
And Owl is...
That's the movie. I watched it as a kid. Yeah, it's a depressing film because they end up at a freaking skull.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I'm like little and watching this at night. I'm like, what the hell's going on? This isn't happening.
You guys remember those episodes of Winnie the Pooh? Like mad respect.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh gosh.
We're very white. We're very white. Yeah.
I remember the characters. I do not remember the episodes. I do remember I love Tigger the most because he's just him. He's just doing him.
The wonderful thing about Tiggers is Tiggers are wonderful
things. They're bouncy, fun. Yeah, I'm not even gonna do the whole song, but I'm down with it.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for
now. Last little bit of goodbye. The read Darth Vader lines.
Andy, you broke up there.
Yeah.
Oh, Winnie.
Yeah, you're breaking up there, man.
Of Darth Vader.
You saying Darth Vader?
Man, his thing completely just froze up, huh?
Yeah. No, try again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so the voice of Winnie the Pooh, Jim Cummings, reading the lines of Darth Vader from Star Wars. If you haven't yet seen that, go watch it on YouTube. It's absolutely hilarious.
That sounds epic. Okay, I'm gonna check that out actually.
I'm gonna do that right now.
Yeah.
Just go to YouTube, say go Darth Vader Winnie the Pooh.
Okay.
So fun.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
And to all of our readers and listeners, go to YouTube or the internet and find it. It is so funny. All right, guys, we are out. See you next week. Tune in for another awesome episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thank you, Colby.